guys, this is a story of why we pay $12,300 in rent every month in New York City. We have 11 children that are very talented in music. And we lived in San Diego, and the kids quickly outgrew San Diego as far as musical opportunities. So we sold our house. Back then our mortgage in San Diego was only $1,500. We sold our house so we could move to San Francisco where there were more opportunities and there was a music conservatory. In San Francisco, we paid $4,500 in rent and we had a 2-bedroom apartment for 12 people. But even in San Francisco, it seemed like there was a cap as to how far up our children could go. And especially my daughter Pearl, her professors were like, oh, you need to find greener pastures. And so I kind of saw the writing on the wall. I was like, well, if they're saying this to Pearl now, I imagine the same thing's going to happen with my other kids when they grow older. So in 2022, 7 of our kids auditioned for Juilliard, and 2 of them also auditioned for Manhattan School of Music. 4 of our kids got accepted to Juilliard and 1 got accepted to Manhattan School of Music. And so we were like, oh, we need to move. Before we moved, I saw that both Juilliard and Manhattan School of Music require that you live on campus if you're a first-time student. That's not really a snobbery thing. It's more like, hey, we want you involved in the school. They did have a few exceptions though. And one of them was if you lived with your immediate family locally. So this is the email I got from Juilliard. This is before I knew Pearl was going to get a paid for dorm, but I was just trying to figure out like, hey, how can we do this? Because the dorm is $25,000-ish when you add in all the extra things you have to pay for. And this is the email I got from Manhattan School of Music. They're like, well, you have to live within an hour and you have to like commit to being part of our community, which makes sense. But the Juilliard email didn't really give a specific distance. They're just like local. And I didn't know what local meant. I was honestly afraid to look for anything outside of the Upper West Side because really the Upper West Side is where Juilliard is. But we looked on Zillow and we found a place. It was like 3 bedrooms. It was like $6,000. But we tried to like see if we could get an application. They didn't even send us an application. Then we found this place. It was $9,800. 5 bedrooms, 5 baths, and it had a backyard, but it was in Harlem, and I was like, oh no, is that too far? And to be honest, $9,800 was way too much, but we were kind of negotiating with a media company that was maybe gonna do a show about our family, and so I was like, well, maybe that'll work out, and we had some savings, so we're like, let's go for it. So we applied for the place, and the landlord was super cool. He had had a big family, so he understood the struggles of a big family, and he was willing to rent to us, and I'm so grateful for that. But the show that we were originally negotiating for didn't work out. There was kind of like a streaming service type thing, and the streaming services were doing poorly at the time. So then we were like, okay, what do we do now? Around this time, an agency contacted us, and they were like, hey, I think you have a really good chance on social media. Like, I'll help coach you. And then, of course, we give a percentage to the management company. But like, they really did help us. And there are some months when I can make a lot of money, and there are some months when I don't make a lot. And my husband does have a 9-to-5 job that he works at in Midtown, and unfortunately with that, it's just a salary. He's not gonna make any more or any less. For a long time, the owner just left the bottom area open, and when he came into town, he would use it just to like stay there. But for the most part, it was just basically vacant. Then about a year ago, I saw that he was going to rent it out, and I panicked. So this is why I panicked. Okay, I know it doesn't look like much now, but this is where my kids play all the time. We just had a bunch of snow, and so all the grass is brown. But over here is the door to the place that the owner was renting out. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like in here we basically like store cans, and in there is where Pearl's friend from Juilliard lives because she's coming from China and needed a place to stay. So we're not really using it for much. But I didn't want some stranger to have access to my kids while they're playing in the backyard. And I'm sure he would have probably done a background check, but there are a lot of people that do bad things that would still pass a background check. And honestly, at the time, I was doing pretty well on YouTube, so I was like, we can do this. So the downstairs unit costs us an additional $2,500. So could I have just said to the kids, oh yeah, don't go outside unless I'm out there watching you? Yes, but my children don't always obey. And it doesn't take long for somebody to do something really bad that like they have to be in therapy for the rest of their lives. And on another level, it's not very soundproof. So you can actually hear conversations down there. And my kids are loud, they play music. I mean, we try not to be obnoxious, but I mean, we play music. And in San Francisco, that was a complaint to the neighbors, and I didn't want to have that happen again. So that was a secondary reason. So I've been looking on Zillow to see if there is a cheaper place because we are struggling. And I looked in Queens. Now there's a place called Jamaica where I can find a 6-bedroom for $7,000-ish a month. And then there's also Fort Lee. Fort Lee, unfortunately, unless you're driving, takes over an hour to get here, so that would make a problem for Manhattan School of Music. Maybe Juilliard, I'm not sure, I don't know what local means. And the Queens, Jamaica, I could find a place over there for less, that's 6 bedrooms, but there's a lot of crime over there, and also it's a much longer distance, and I don't know if that would qualify as local, so anyway, that's the problem. Basically, with our family, we're going to have 2 or 3 in college at any one given time, and so living locally, so you don't have to spend $25,000 a year per kid to stay in a dorm is really important to us. Because if we move too far away and our area that we live in is no longer considered local, then any savings we would have from moving to the outer boroughs would be absorbed in just paying for dorms, and we just can't do that right now. Maybe one day, but we're just not at that point. Our son Elijah recently got accepted to Juilliard for cello, and he doesn't have a dorm, and he is always at home because it's hard to find a place to practice there. There are separate dorm practice rooms, but if you're not in the dorm, so anyway, I understand why they say you have to live close. So Elijah's always coming home. He's coming home for lunch. He's coming home to practice. He's coming home pretty much for everything. So was it crazy to leave San Diego so that the kids could up their musical ability? Yes, I sometimes wonder if it was just absolutely insane and stupid, and yeah, I definitely have second thoughts about it, but at the same time, I hear the kids' music, and it's so exquisite, it's so beautiful, and they're prospering so much, and, if I had a time machine, I don't know, would I just stay in San Diego and just be like, oh well, or, I don't know, I don't have a time machine.